It's
like
very approachable. That's a great word for
yeah.
Uruguay. I think it's like kind of this hidden gem, so to speak, right? Kind of overlooked place. But when you get there, it's people are nice. It's clean. It's orderly. Things work, right?
So I usually like to kick it off with just a general question of what brought you to this region. I know you travel a lot, Sasha.
hmm
So why this country?
Well, we did this huge South America trip several years ago where we had just kind of started doing the digital nomad thing, and we're confident enough after some time in Mexico to take the show on the road and visit a bunch of different countries in the region. So on that trip, we were here in Colombia. And we managed to go to Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Bolivia, and Brazil. And as digital nomads, we got to travel a little bit slower, than like backpackers or just your average tourist. We need to set up shop and get work done. So we did a lot of month-long stays in different cities on that trip. And as we got towards the end, when we were looking at, okay, where else? Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, are we going to make it to those places? We had to cut that part of the region out of our itinerary, just not enough time to, get work done, also explore. So, many years later, we're thinking, hey, we missed that region. Let's try to get down there, and actually found a really great flight with American Airlines points that got us from Asheville, which is like, we have a small regional airport in Asheville. It got us all the way to Buenos Aires, which was amazing. Like, that's one of those flights where a lot of people don't go to Argentina. They go to Mexico or Costa Rica instead because it's so much cheaper and quicker to fly. So when we found this deal, we thought, why not? Let's go for it. Let's go to Argentina and Uruguay. So we still haven't made it to Paraguay. It'll have to be a trip of its own, but we did spend pretty much the entire winter last year between Argentina and Uruguay. And so, we booked the flights into Buenos Aires, and then we figured, hey, while we're there, right, you can take the ferry, which I detailed in the article, how to take the ferry over to Uruguay. It's super easy. It's quite affordable. And we decided to spend a few weeks checking out Montevideo to see how it stacks up as a nomad hub, and see if we like it there because of all these things you brought up. Like, it's a strong democracy. It's safe. It's a very progressive country for not only the region, but for the world. It's, more stable than Argentina and Brazil in terms of the economic and political situation. So we thought, why not go check it out and see for ourselves? It's one of those places, like, I feel like it doesn't have a lot of info. If you look up Medellin, for example, where I am now, or Puerto Vallarta or Buenos Aires, some of these other places, there's tons of Facebook groups and blogs and YouTube channels and this and that. And I feel like Uruguay is kind of forgotten.
Yeah, I agree. It is a bit mysterious, and if you haven't really looked into it or traveled there yourself, you might not know very much about it just off the top of your head. What are some of the other cultural highlights that you experienced?
Well, if you're going to talk about Uruguay and the local culture, you're going to have to bring up beef. It is a carnivore's paradise, I believe I said in the article. There are more heads of cattle than there are people. I think it's even like 4-1. So just think about that, right? A large swath of the country is dedicated to cattle ranching, and that means that beef is a huge part of the diet. So if you're a vegetarian, or especially if you're a vegan, Uruguay might not be the best choice. There are some options for you, surely, but really that is a huge part of the culture. You go to these local parrillas, the grills, where, they got steak, chorizo, blood sausage, all this stuff on there in the market, and you could smell it from blocks away. And sitting down for like this large lunch with a bunch of different kinds of meat. It's something we're not really accustomed to either. Like, I do eat meat, but generally not like a ton of red meat at lunchtime. But when in Rome, that is the thing to do in Uruguay. And just like that whole culture associated with the cattle ranching, they call them gauchos, the cowboy, basically. But forget your idea of the American cowboy. They have a completely different style with what they wear, and a lot of mate drinking and beef eating is a big part of that culture.
Well, hopefully it's good quality stuff, if people are eating that much
Oh, it
meat.
is. It's actually amazing. I think I mentioned a little bit about it in the article.
Nice. So although you didn't really, I guess you didn't get to see the beach in all its glory, how would you compare it to, I think you've been to some of the best beach destinations in the world. So it might not be that fair, but how would you rate the beach?
So the one in Santa Ana, we didn't really get to go to, but because of the rain. But we did check it out the last day. It cleared up right before we had to catch the bus to the city, and it's nice. It's that one's like very chill. There's not much going on. There's a couple restaurants along the beach, but it's mostly just bring your own towel, bring your own chair, set up, do your thing. Whereas in Montevideo, they do have some bigger beaches where there are places where you can rent your chairs, umbrellas, whatever. They have drinks for sale. I did like going to the beach there in Montevideo. It was nice that it was so close, right? We could do our work during the day and then say, hey, let's cut out, let's go for a walk. Check out the sunset, watch people playing volleyball, football, whatever. One important thing to note about the beach in Montevideo, it's on the river. It's not on the ocean. So you're swimming in the Rio Plata, and it was pretty cold when we were there in February. I got in and got right out and was begging the sun to come out. But it's fresh river water you're swimming in. It's not salt water. You don't really get big waves at all. So you're not, there's not surfers or boogie boarders or any of that sort of thing. People just go to the beach there to hang out. A lot of people playing football. They have these courts along the beach. That's kind of fun to just, go watch. It's not professional, but they're good, better than me.
So pretty good quality.
Yeah, and you got this awesome view, and they have this. They call it the Rambla. If anyone knows Puerto Vallarta, Mazatlan, they have a Malecon, right? It's this long boardwalk area, and in Montevideo, it's called the Rambla, and it's great. It goes all along the coast, so you can walk, jog, skate, rent a bike, whatever. Nice views all along the way. Good places to stop. That was cool. Like as the beach itself, no, it's not the most impressive beach, but just the overall experience of being in the middle of the capital city, and then you just walk to the beach, and it's nice and it's clean, and there's activities you can do. There's restaurants and bars and stuff. Really enjoyed that. The better beaches apparently are in Punta del Este and other points up the coast. Those are on the ocean, and we looked at going there, and it was just like because it was Carnival season. There wasn't much availability for hotels or Airbnbs, and they were quite expensive because that's where people want to go during Carnival. They want to get out of the city and go up the coast. So we didn't experience it, but it would be high on my list next time. And for anyone who's visiting, when it's not a major holiday, definitely I would recommend going up the coast and checking that area out if you want those nicer beaches, if you want, the ocean vibes.
So I mentioned kind of at the top of the call that it stands out for being really safe. Was that your experience as well when you were there? Did you feel, uncomfortable at all? Did you look over your shoulder, anything like that?
No, I felt super safe there. And we've done a lot of traveling, not just in Latin America, but just, around the world. And I usually have that spidey sense, right? When I feel like, I better watch my back. Maybe should be walking here. Should maybe put my phone away, sort of thing. But in Uruguay, we went out to the Carnival things. Like I said, there it's not this big party like in Rio. Okay, when you go to Rio and you go to Carnival parties, you kind of expect your phone's not going to make it back with you. I hate to say that, or just like you got to be really careful, right? With your surroundings and with your stuff. And in Montevideo, you go over to the Carnival section of the city, if you will. They actually have like a carnival going on with rides and games for kids. And then they have the outdoor amphitheater where they have the shows. And that's what Carnival is there. So you go over there and it's like, there's grandparents and children running around. It's like super safe. So just compare that thing, right? Carnival, this big, huge party, quote unquote, right? Whereas maybe in Rio, maybe in Mazatlan, Barranquilla, you got to watch yourself. Montevideo, it was super relaxed. Even going to the local Carnival stuff where it was just in the street. It was just a little stage in the street, people grabbing beers from the store, hanging out. You didn't really see police or anything. It's just like, it's safe. Nobody's worried about anything, which it was really refreshing after, like you said, watching your back, watching your pockets all the time. I'd never felt any sense of unease. And I even went to the football game there, where if you go to like a big football game in Buenos Aires, you kind of feel this like kind of energy of wow, it could turn sour, right? Like they're also passionate about football, and like the visiting fans are not allowed to go to the stadium in Buenos Aires. You can't even wear the other team's colors within a mile radius or whatever. And I went to the game in Montevideo, and it's like, again, it just felt like tranquilo. It felt relaxed. People were bringing their big thermos and their mate cup. They're bringing it into the stadium, and I'm just like thinking of going to a sporting event in the U.S. My goodness, they won't even give you the bottle cap for a plastic water bottle anymore because they think you could use it to throw it into the crowd. And in Uruguay, they're like, yeah, bring this huge, heavy thermos because you must have your hot water to drink mate. And yeah, sure enough, everybody's just sitting there pouring hot water, drinking mate. No one is throwing these heavy projectiles at the field or at each other, and just had a nice relaxing time at the game. They also don't sell beer with alcohol there, which seems to be the case in all Latin America. I guess that's the one thing they're like, no, you can't have this. You cannot have real beer.
Right. Some sort of
maybe
measure.
Put a couple of beers in them and it would go south. I don't know. I think the Uruguayans would still be relatively relaxed. I mean, it's football. It's the passions do get stirred up,
So aside from safety, which I think also speaks to the high standard of living there, what else in your mind stands out about Uruguay compared to, all of its famous next door neighbors and beyond? Like, what is it about this country that stands out for you?
It just seemed to have a very different kind of mindset about, everything. Like, I mentioned probably several points in the article how they're so much different from their neighbors with, acceptance of gay marriage and abortion, and there's legal marijuana and all these things that are just kind of unheard of in the rest of the region, and this strong social safety net. So I guess maybe I didn't do a ton of research into these sorts of things of taxes or this or that, but the people in Uruguay all seem very content to contribute to this system and to have this, right, like to make sure unemployed people are taken care of, elderly people, disabled people are taken care of, and being open to different viewpoints, to different ideas. There's just kind of super progressive mentality, which you don't really find a lot in when you're traveling in Latin America, especially in these places that are super Catholic. It's Semana Santa right now, so I don't know if it's such a big deal in Uruguay, really. Whereas the rest of the region, it's this huge thing with processions and stuff. So yeah, it's just noticeably different right from the first day, and a lot of that is just me having spent so much time in far more conservative places like Mexico City or Bogota, Colombia, Lima, Peru, these cities, right? Montevideo is totally different. The people are totally different. Just the mentality stood out right away. And I appreciate that. I mean, maybe some people would prefer the more orthodox, conservative way of life, but that's not really my thing. So I appreciate Uruguay's openness and progressiveness.
I'm with you on that. I found it really refreshing after spending some time in the more conservative countries to then go to a place where things are a lot more progressive, as you said. Yeah, I definitely can agree with that one.
Well, and it aids the stability of the country, right? That's why Uruguay is far more stable politically and economically than some of its neighbors. I feel like the system appears to be working. Like I mentioned in the article, the strongest democracy in the Americas. I honestly would not have guessed that, and some people could criticize maybe the study that put this together. But if you go dive in and read this report like I did, you find out, wow, okay, it actually makes sense. And I tried to keep the history part of the article brief, but I just found it so interesting the more I dove into it, because I really didn't know that much. And I think most of us don't, right? It's, it's one of those countries that just look at the map. It's hidden down there and you don't really think that much about it. But when you do dive into the history and how they got to where they are now with very recent, in the grand scheme of things, very recent turmoil with a military dictatorship and stuff, to look where they are now, it's amazing.
Definitely. One of the things that stands out for me about Uruguay that many people may not know about is that you can get citizenship here fairly easily, not to
Seems like
mention
it.
just regular residency. So it's one of the few countries where you can jump straight to permanent residency status by basically showing you can support yourself and you have a clean criminal record
Hmm.
and meet those basic requirements, and then you can skip the whole temporary residency period and go straight to permanent, which is a huge benefit, especially if you are looking for a second passport at some point. I don't know the exact ranking of Uruguay's passport and how powerful it is or not, but we're always talking about backups and plan Bs and
Hmm.
having options. So this is one country, at least in South America, where you can get that fairly easily, and it was included in our naturalization index in 2022 in one of our sister publications. So we did a big ranking of all the countries in the world where this is
Hmm.
possible to get a citizenship through naturalization, and Uruguay came out in the top 5 or so. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Look at
it's
that.
it's a,
And they have a digital nomad visa. I mean, a lot of countries are rolling these out now. It's nothing groundbreaking at this point, but I appreciate that. The amount of visa runs I've had to do over the years and stuff. It's nice that it's starting to get a little bit easier for folks like myself who are definitely not to the retirement stage yet. Still got plenty
couple
of
more
years of work.
years.
Yeah, a couple, but I would definitely go back and take them up on that nomad visa. And stay a while longer. It was the one thing I don't know if you were going to ask about the cost, but I'll just say it that it was noticeable coming from Argentina over to Uruguay, which Argentina is in this crazy state of fluctuation right now. I wrote a feature on Buenos Aires probably this time last year, right? And I was just talking to a new friend here in Colombia who's about to go there the other night, and the blue dollar rate exchange in Argentina when we were there this time last year was around 350 or so. It's 1,000 now. They had to come up with a new bill. They had to come up with a 2,000 peso bill. So keeping that in mind, right? Argentina's economy is kind of in shambles right now. And when we visited last year with $100 bills, we were getting this amazing rate for everything. So we did get kind of spoiled in Buenos Aires with these like $5 steaks and $2 bottles of wine and 20-cent subway rides, and this it was ridiculously cheap. But then to go hop over to Uruguay is noticeable, like, whoa, it's a lot more expensive here. But then when you sit back and compare it to the US, to Canada, to the UK, you go, okay, really it's not crazy expensive. It's just compared to Buenos Aires when we were just there at this time where the dollar was super strong, kind of put a spin on it that maybe it's not fair to Uruguay, because we're thinking, oh, it's so expensive. But in hindsight now, a year later, I'm looking back at my numbers I use this app called Trail Wallet. It's really nice. For anybody who travels a lot, you can put in your different categories and track your spending. And I'm looking back and going, oh, you know what? It wasn't so bad. We paid this much for the bus. We paid this much, to go out to eat. We paid this much for a beer, this much for the Carnival tickets. Like at the end of the day, it wasn't this crazy expensive destination. It's just the comparison with Argentina at the time was.
Well, this actually relates to a question we just got from Patricia, and she says,
Oh, yeah.
"Are there restrictions on how much money you can bring into the country?" I did a quick Google, and it was $10,000.
Yeah, I feel like that's like
the
everywhere.
standard. And then she says, "How much do you think I need to stay there for 2 months? For me, traveling alone, I'd like to spend time in Montevideo and take trips for a day or two to other places. Also, do you have any contacts of expats I could arrange to meet there? Thanks."
So, yeah, thanks for the question there, Patricia. Yeah, as Sophia mentioned, the limit seems to be 10,000 US, which it seems pretty standard around the world. I'm always checking no on that box when I arrive in countries. Like, I wish I had more than 10,000 on it. And for 2 months, geez, let me think. So I assume you would probably go the route of Airbnb if you're going to stay that long. And I mentioned in the article that in Montevideo, you can find some really nice places for between 1,000 and 1,500 US. And I'm talking, really nice newer buildings with a doorman, with a gym, with a pool. One of them had a cinema, like a movie room you could go with recliners and a big screen and all this. And so that was in the $1,000 to $1,500 range. If you're not so picky about all these amenities, you want a local place, you could probably drop that down to 700. I don't know. I'm pretty crafty with Airbnb. I always recommend people, zoom in and out on the map and mess with the price maximum. But you can find nice fully furnished places with all the utilities up and running for 1,000 or less. And then if you're okay with taking the bus, which we were, taking the bus or walking, you barely spend anything on transportation. Maybe some money for a cab here and there. If you go out to eat a lot, obviously you need more. It's not super cheap there, but it's very reasonable. I think to go there, get an Airbnb that's pretty nice in a nice part of the city, and be able to go out to eat here and there, be able to go out and enjoy some local entertainment, whether it's football game or a carnival thing. I think 2,000 a month would have you sitting pretty, really. And then if you wanted to stay longer, you could certainly negotiate a longer term rental agreement. You cook more versus going out, right? You do the sightseeing stuff once, you don't really have to do it again. So maybe your first time there, you're going to want to go out and do this, and you're going to want to go to the beach, you're going to want to go live the gaucho life, check out a cattle ranch or whatever. Then you're going to spend a little more on getting out there, getting another place to stay. But I want to just throw it out and say $2,000, you'd be living pretty comfortably.
And would you recommend that strategy? It seems like Patricia's thinking about bringing the money with her and then exchanging it.
No, I don't know. I absolutely would not. You can take out USD in Uruguay. I don't know why you would bring a ton of money. We brought a ton of $100 bills to Buenos Aires because when you take money out of the ATM there, you get a terrible rate. So when we were going, for example, from Uruguay back to Argentina, we went to the ATM and took out $100 bills to take back to Argentina to get a good rate. So I don't think there's any reason to bring a ton of cash to Uruguay. Just make sure with your bank, they know you're traveling, and see if you pay any fees. We use Charles Schwab because they reimburse ATM fees at the end of the month. So, if you can set up an account with them, or honestly, I don't even recall that the ATMs in Montevideo charged us a fee to take out dollars. And if they did, it was minimal. So why carry around a ton of cash when you can get there and take out? And the thing with dollars there is, if you're going to buy a property or something like that, that price is in dollars, but like the local economy still runs in pesos. So you're going to pay for the bus in pesos. You're going to go to the market and grab your produce and pay in pesos. Maybe they do want your dollars, but they're not going to take your $100 bill and give you change, right? You should have pesos. So when you use an ATM there, you can choose dollars or pesos.
Okay, that's really good to know.
You bring some cash. I've just generally, unless Argentina is the one example in the last several years where we've actually brought a bunch of cash.
And Cuba, I was just in Cuba, and
there you go. I haven't been to Cuba yet, but yeah, there's in Uruguay you can use a credit card everywhere as long as your credit card doesn't charge a foreign transaction fee. I would go to the supermarket, use a credit card. Bought my football tickets online with a credit card. Went out to some of the bars and restaurants, credit card. We only had cash for those things like the bus, the local market, grabbing some pastries from the bakery next door, this sort of thing.
All right, well, that's good to know. And you've given her a nice sort of ballpark figure for how much she should be expecting to spend, and it sounds very reasonable. So that's great news. One final question that I had that I was just kind of curious about: how about, you mentioned your Spanish is decent. Is it a Spanish required type of place, or could you get by in English?
I feel like Spanish is going to make your life just much better and much easier. I met some people who spoke a little bit English here and there, but generally there was, I was speaking Spanish. So I feel like it's good to brush up if if you've learned some before, get Duolingo, something like that. Listen to some podcasts. As far as the Uruguayan Spanish, I found it pretty standard. I've been all over now. I've been in Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia, Argentina, Chile. And for example, in Chile, I find it's difficult to get by to they use a lot of slang. They have, different accents and stuff. Uruguay, I found it pretty much if standard Spanish. It's pretty easy to get by, and just the people are super friendly and accommodating. They're not used to seeing a lot of tourists, really. And a lot of tourists there get off the cruise ship and go take some pictures and go get back on. So, folks like us, digital nomads who are in the same apartment for weeks at a time, going to the same shop, the same restaurants, they notice that, and then they're happy to, converse with you. And they don't speak super rapidly. I didn't pick up on a ton of slang. Felt like people were trying their best to help me out in my quest to speak Spanish with them. Whereas like in Chile, I'm like, look at me. Do you think I know all this slang? And come on, let's go back to like 6th grade, here. Dumb it down, please.
Well, luckily, I think it's one of the more user-friendly languages and easier to pick up. And hopefully people already have like a bit of knowledge, you can say hello, goodbye, I'll have a beer, please, in Spanish.
Honestly, these days you can have Google Translate on your phone, and you can take a picture of a sign or of a menu. You can have someone talk into it. I mean, it's wild. I try not to rely on that because, like I said, I've been learning Spanish here and there in different countries and traveling. I try to use it when I can. But when we recently went to Japan, wow, Google Translate was a lifesaver. So if you're coming to Uruguay and your Spanish sucks, don't worry, you'll survive. But definitely make an effort. The people appreciate it, and it will just make your experience that much better, even if it's just very casual stuff.
Well, it's always nice to know that there are good people there, that people are friendly. I think that makes a huge difference and makes the place sound just, I don't know, more approachable. So it sounds
it's very approachable. That's a great word for Uruguay, I think. It's like kind of this hidden gem, so to speak, right? Kind of overlooked place. But when you get there, it's people are nice. It's clean. It's orderly. Things work, right? The government functions there. It's this crazy idea. The rest of the region seems to have missed the memo there that it's possible.
Most of the world, I'd say, these days.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good place to visit if you're a solo traveler as well. Like it seems like it would be, again, approachable, user-friendly, easygoing, safe. So it has a lot going for it, for sure. So I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you again, Sasha, for showing up in a hectic moment in your life.
That's all right. It's just my life, especially during when I decide to travel in Latin America during Semana Santa. Once again, if anybody wants to reach out to me, my blog is called Grateful Nomads with a G at the beginning. Gnome, like garden gnomes. We're English teachers, and we like the alliteration. I don't really have much content on Uruguay yet. I've been super busy this last year. Started a full-time job and still traveling and still doing a lot of other things. But I'm always happy to chat. Always happy to send recommendations. I have gotten in the habit finally of making lists on Google Maps for each place. So, if you do go to Montevideo, I could send some cool spots to check out, restaurants, tours, that sort of thing. Feel free to reach out anytime. I'm approachable as well.
Well, perfect. Thank you, Sasha, so much for that. And thank you for everyone who came out. And I'll see you at the next one. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
See y'all.